Hello, everyone, and hope you had a safe and good 4th of July. I spent the holiday freeloading at my cousin's house with some free food and free firecrackers because why the hell not? Yeah. So, we're going to continue on with our WrestleMania Sunday rebooking videos that we've been doing for the last already a couple months already. So, we're going to move on to the next WrestleMania in our series, which is WrestleMania 37 from 2021. This was the very first, not just the first WrestleMania WWE show, and with fans in attendance because this was actually, during the whole, still in the middle of the pandemic when, everything was still limited and everything. So this was actually the first show in like over a year that actually had fans in attendance, and it wasn't exactly like a full capacity because they still had the whole restrictions going on and everything, and people still had to wear masks and whatnot. So they had like people there, and then they had like some like cardboard cutouts to make it look like it was more full. But yeah, this was still a very special show for WWE because so yeah, this was a very special show because, like I said, it was, of course, if you watched WWE during the whole pandemic thing, they had the whole Thunderdome, and it was doing the best what they could at the time. It wasn't the best time. It really wasn't. So it was great to be able to see a show with fans back in attendance and everything. It was just, um, and then it was also a really interesting show because I remember watching this live on pay-per-view, and if you watched it live, you already know what happened during the beginning of the show. Of course, when you have an outdoor event, you know, you always got to take into account what might happen with the weather. And of course, this being in Florida, which is a state known for having, hurricanes and rainy weather, um, right when the show was about to start, they had a they had a like a severe thunderstorm going on, so they pretty much had to postpone like the show for like almost an hour, I want to say it was, and they pretty much had to evacuate the fans from the stands because it was like a real heavy rainstorm going on. And I remember talking to one of my friends who was actually there in attendance, and he said, yeah, they had the sirens going off and everything, and they had pretty much evacuated most of the fans into like the concourse or the hall or whatever the inside of the arena is called, and they pretty much were all just like all jammed up in there, restrictions and COVID aside, I guess, until the weather, subsided and everything, things got better. This did, however, give us one of the most iconic images in the entire history of WWE, and that is Samoa Joe in a poncho. Yes, I even remember watching this live with my cousin and be like, hey, look at Samoa Joe's wearing a poncho. But so pretty much they had to like improvise pretty much. They didn't want to actually cancel the show or postpone it, so they pretty much did like interviews like backstage with the superstars fighting that night, and until the weather actually got a lot better, then they slowly. My friend was telling me they started slowly, letting the fans back into the arena, to their seats and everything once the storm had like pretty much calmed down. So the actual show didn't start until like maybe like an hour after it was supposed to start because of the whole rain delay and everything. But it was a unique thing to see live. I'm pretty sure if you go back and watch the replay of this on, I don't know what the hell it's on now, Peacock, Netflix, whatever the hell it's on nowadays. If you go back and watch the replay, they obviously edit out the whole delay with the rain and everything. They pretty much just edit that whole thing out and just go, straight into the actual show. So, with that being said, let's go ahead and see what the WWE gave us on this rainy, gloomy day. This was, of course, the start. As you saw the previous year, this was the start of the 2 night WrestleManias, and it's been so ever since, which is a pretty good format. And like I said, I have my pros and my cons about that. I will talk about that when I get to this year's WrestleMania, which is still a few weeks away. Um, we're almost there. We're almost there. But in the meantime, for now, we're just gonna stick with WrestleMania 37. Again, 2 night show. starting off on night one. There was no pre-show since the year before. There hasn't been there has been pre-shows, but there hasn't been any matches on the pre-shows since WrestleMania 36 the following year, which in a way, is really not that big of a complaint, because like I said, I'll get to that when I actually discuss the two-night WrestleManias later on. So, starting off on night one, the main event was Drew McIntyre challenging Bobby Lashley for the WWE title. Many, 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 many fans wanted Drew McIntyre to be the first superstar, to make his way to the entrance once the whole COVID thing ended. And the first show of fans, they wanted Drew McIntyre, who was, a face at the time and had been carrying the WWE through the pandemic. They wanted him to be the main first guy to make his way down that ramp, and of course he was against Bobby Lashley. I honestly thought this was going to be a quick, 5 minute squash match, and Drew McIntyre would win the WWE title. You know, give the fans a happy moment for their first night back after COVID. But instead, Bobby Lashley won by knockout. I think he had like Drew McIntyre like in the hurt lock and he passed out. I I was actually surprised that happened, and I'm pretty sure a lot of fans were like, okay, this is the first show, let alone WrestleMania, that you have back in over a year with fans, and you're gonna start off with the heel winning by a technical submission. Kind of deflates, the whole atmosphere. But I would have had Drew McIntyre defeat Bobby Lashley, and I really honestly thought that was gonna happen, and I thought he would have done it like in a quick like in a Brock Lesnar Goldberg type of way, like over in a few minutes, a couple moves, Claymore, 1, 2, 3, new WWE champion, crowd starts off happy, first time being back, but that obviously did not happen. So what can you do? Up next was a women's tag team turmoil match, where the winners of this match would go on to challenge the women for the women's tag team champions the next night on Sunday. And we had mixed teams like Lana and Naomi, Carmella and Billie Kay. Then you had the Riot Squad, Natalia and Tamina, and Mandy Rose and Dana Brooke. And another unfortunate incident because of the rainstorm they had. I'm guessing that the ramp was still, wet and everything. And I remember watching this and Mandy Rose tripping down the rampway because, like I said, it was wet from the rain. I believe they edited that out as well. Um, the women's tag team division at this time was, as you can tell, just like not too much cared about because they had just random tag teams thrown together. Like my biggest gripe was why would you split the Iconics, for example, who were a real true tag team, split them up, put them on separate brands, do nothing with either one of them, and then throw them in random tag teams with other random superstars. Like why? That was like pointless. But this was WWE. Vince McMahon was still in charge. He did things just to do it because the man was losing his mind at this time. The match was won by Natalia and Tamina, who Tamina probably got the biggest fan support in her entire career. I remember the crowd just chanting crazy for Tamina, for Tamina. I'm like, okay, well that's different. I've never really heard of anybody, chant for Tamina. I honestly would have gone with the Riot Squad winning because one, like I said, they were like one of the actual true tag teams in this match, and Liv Morgan is currently one of my top favorites in the entire company. Ruby Riot, I've never really been a fan of like at all. Like I never really have. Um, if not, I would have gone to Mandy Rose and Dana Brooke even because they have been tag teaming for a good while. The other teams are just like kind of just thrown together. So up next was Seth Rollins versus Cesaro. This was Cesaro's actually first and only one-on-one match at WrestleMania. Seth Rollins, I was a heel at the time. I don't think they really had anything else going for him at this time. And I remember him starting this feud with Cesaro a couple months back, like after the Royal Rumble, I want to say it was, and this led to him facing Cesaro's partner at the time, Shinsuke Nakamura, at Fastlane the month prior, and Seth Rollins won, which led to this match here. And I honestly don't even remember too much of this match, to be honest. Like I said, I honestly don't remember. I'm pretty sure it was a good match given the two superstars involved. But Cesaro did get the win, which was a good, hopefully a good sign of things to come for him because he did get a shot at the Universal title the following month at Backlash. That, of course, was another false down for the guy because obviously he was just seen by management at the time as like a flavor of the month, which I think he could have gone a lot better, with his career, I know, like main event wise, but I just don't think they really utilized him to the best way possible. Up next was the Raw Tag Team titles. It was the New Day defending against Omos and AJ Styles. I honestly don't remember how this match came about. I do remember the build up to it where New Day was, fucking with Omos and AJ saying that they weren't a real tag team and all that. And they could do they were like doing like a game show thing on Raw. I remember that. Um, but yeah, Omos and AJ ended up winning the Raw tag team titles. I think this made AJ Styles a Grand Slam champion. So yeah, there was that. Up next was a steel cage match. It was Shane McMahon versus Braun Strowman. I honestly don't even remember Shane McMahon being on WWE TV at this time, but I remember the build up to this was pretty stupid because it involved Shane McMahon bullying Braun Strowman. Like, how the hell you're a big ass guy like Braun Strowman? How the hell you getting bullied by a little guy, like an older guy like Shane McMahon? Like it's just like one of those WWE logic type of things. Like, okay, then the whole thing of Braun Strowman saying he got bullied when he was younger. Um, yeah, it wasn't a well received storyline, at least not the way they did it. I'm pretty sure they gone about it like a different way. It probably would have been a lot better, but it was still a cage. Braun Strowman won, and yeah, and I think he got like released too, not so long after this. And but yeah. Up next was The Miz and John Morrison versus the team of Bad Bunny and Damian Priest. I did not see this one coming at all. But once the Bad Bunny and Miz had the little altercation at the Royal Rumble, I was like, okay, it's gonna lead to something. And they originally did announce a one-on-one match, The Miz versus Bad Bunny, but then John Morrison got involved and Damian Priest. At the time, Damian Priest, who was just barely making it to the main roster after being on NXT. I'm a Damian Priest fan. I like the guy. He was my favorite on NXT during the Black and Gold era when I first got into it. So it was exciting to see him on the main roster. I loved his, original theme song he had when he moved from NXT to the main roster. I don't know why the hell they changed it. Um, Bad Bunny actually did really good for himself. One of the actually good celebrity performances in WWE. His entrance was pretty cool with the whole coming in on a semi truck and everything. And then the Miz and John Morrison entrance was, it was pretty, corny but fun at the same time because they had their little rap video they did, and then they came out to it with a whole bunch of rabbits and costumes and all that. So yeah, but it was a pretty good match. And Bad Bunny, like I said, he did really good for being a celebrity. He did really well for himself, and to see him like take bumps and everything was like really, really impressive. And then our main event of night two was my all-time favorite, Sasha Banks, defending the SmackDown Women's Championship against Bianca Belair. Um, Very emotional night for both women because this was the one second that oh yeah, I did because this was the first time two African American women had main evented WrestleMania. Of course, it was both of their first time main eventing WrestleMania. Period. Um, just 2 years prior, we had the first women's main event with Ronda, Becky, and Charlotte, and now with Sasha and Bianca being the second women's main event at WrestleMania, which left only Bayley being the only one of the original four horsewomen to have not main evented WrestleMania since women have main evented WrestleMania, which I think is kind of sucks because I feel like Bayley has been the most underrated of the original four horsewomen, and to see her be the only one of those four to not have main event in WrestleMania, it sucks because she's really good. She's like gone on to become one of my top favorites in the company. I wasn't too much of a fan when she did the hugger thing, but um, once she turned heel, like I became a fan of hers, and Well, so I'll get to that part a little bit longer when I rebook this, but in the meantime, uh, Sasha Banks versus Bianca Belair in the main event for SmackDown Women's Championship. Bianca Belair won, and it was a pretty good, decent match. And then moving on to night two, we kicked things off with Randy Orton versus the Fiend Bray Wyatt. Randy Orton won in like 5 minutes. I don't know. I guess these two just never had good chemistry, especially at WrestleMania. The last time these two fought at WrestleMania was a couple years before in Florida at 33, and that match was pretty bad and everything. Then they had a match here, which, in all honesty, Randy Orton probably should not have won because it was the Fiend's first time being back since he got burned alive and everything. Um, and when you go back and think about it, it's actually kind of heartbreaking in a way because, as you know, Bray Wyatt, who is no longer with us, rest in peace to one of the greats. This is actually his second to last ever match in WWE. Um, I said a few months after this, I know I think he had like a health issue with his heart, and that's why he wasn't on TV for a good while. And then they ended up releasing him. And I want to say it was like around my birthday too when I found out that they had released, Bray Wyatt. It sucked because he was like really one of the best, performers they had, on the microphone in the ring. And then he came back a year later, and everyone was so excited to have Bray Wyatt back. And then he came back. He did like a mostly promos and exchanges with LA Knight. That led to them finally having a match at the Royal Rumble of 24, I believe. And then Bray Wyatt, LA Knight had their match in the Royal Rumble. And then after that, Bray Wyatt was, I believe, rumor was he was going to face Bobby Lashley at WrestleMania that year. But then he got taken off TV again because of another health issue. And unfortunately, that would have been the last we ever saw of Bray Wyatt because he passed away that summer. And I remember, reading about it and like really, really being upset about it. I've heard and, about many wrestlers, passing away and everything. But I think Bray Wyatt was one of the few that actually really hit me because, like I said, I have always really liked him since his main roster debut. I've always been a fan and everything. I've had the honor to see him live, um, in both his Eater of Worlds character and as the Fiend. Um, so it was really heartbreaking to hear that he had passed away at such a young age. Um, like I said, there's one of the few wrestlers that actually their death actually like really hit me hard, and is like really heartbreaking. It's kind of heartbreaking too to go back and see this because, like I said, this was like his second to last match, so it like kind of tugs at the heartstrings, if you will. So yeah. Up next was the women's tag team titles. Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler defending against Natalia and Tamina, who won the tag team turmoil match the night before. Again, this is probably the most crowd support I've ever seen Tamina get. Of course, uh, I honestly don't remember who the hell won. I think Natalia and Tamina won, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know why I have written down in my notes that Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler, but I could be wrong. I want to say that Natalia and Tamina won the match, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know why the hell I ever done. Anyway, up next was Sami Zayn versus Kevin Owens. Of course, Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens destined to do this forever. Whether they're as a team, whether they're as opponents, one's a heel, one's a face, the other's a heel, one's a face. This was during the whole conspiracy gimmick of Sami Zayn, and I completely forgot that he had Logan Paul in his corner. And this was the first time that Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens fought each other at WrestleMania. it's and I really don't remember too much about this WrestleMania. But I haven't down in my notes that they only wrestled for 9 minutes, so I'm pretty sure it might not have been that great. I mean, I'm pretty sure Sammy and Kevin can put on a hell of a match for like 20 or so minutes or something. But for only 9 minutes, I'm gonna guess it wasn't all that great. Up next was the United States Championship. It was Matt Riddle defending against Sheamus. Sheamus won with one of the most amazing bro kicks I have ever seen. When Matt Riddle did meet, I believe he did like a moonsault and then bro kick. Match was over. And of course, if you haven't heard the news today, Sheamus apparently is not going to renew his contract with WWE. So there's a good chance that we might have seen the last of Sheamus in WWE. He was been a great wrestler. He's my stepmom's favorite wrestler. Um, I've never, been someone who's ever hated him or anything. I've always had a great amount of respect for him. He's never been one of my top favorites, but he's I like Sheamus, and it's gonna be suck to see him go, and it'll probably be weird to see him if he does pop up like in a different company like AEW or whatever. Um, we'll see what happens from there. It's really up to his decision, his choice, and we'll see where he goes from here. Up next was a Nigerian drum fight for the Intercontinental title. Big E defending against Apollo Crews. I'll be honest, I've never really gotten behind Apollo Crews. Nothing against him. I'm pretty sure he's a decent wrestler, but I've never really been into him. I liked his theme song he used to have, his regular original NXT theme song. Um, and then I know they tried and tried and tried to do something with him, and they tried this whole Nigerian Prince, I think he was, and then to defeat Big E for the Intercontinental title at WrestleMania, and then not even defend that title not once on pay per view until he lost it to. I want to say he lost it to. Damn, I actually don't even remember who the hell he lost it to at that time. Um, I honestly don't remember. But I know the whole time he was champion, he never once competed on a pay per view, let alone defended it. So yeah, I just could never get behind Apollo Crews. Like I said, if anything, Big E should have got the win, but he obviously lost to Apollo, and I guess that was like a thank you for all the hard work you've done the last few years. But like I said, I've never really been a big Apollo Crews fan, so yeah. Up next was the Raw Women's Championship. It was Asuka defending against Rhea Ripley. This was when Rhea actually made her actual main roster debut that this year when she was in the Royal Rumble and she was on the final two with Bianca, and then she actually made onto the Raw roster, came out and challenged Asuka for the Raw Women's Championship. It was so good to see Rhea, get her win back from the previous year, and then to have, I believe it was Motionless in White, or no, it wasn't that, not that year. I forgot the band that performed her NXT theme. I forgot who they were. Motionless in White does her current, but I forgot who it was that does her previous one, and they performed it for her. And she wasn't quite yet in the whole mommy stage. She was still had that NXT vibe to her with the I think like the short blonde hair and everything. And but she ended up getting her win and her title. Congratulations to her. Of course, yes, I am a Rhea Ripley fan. So it was nice to see her. At this time, I still wasn't like really into her. I don't think I got into it being a Rhea Ripley fan until like her mommy Judgment Day era. But in hindsight, I'm glad she won. And then in the main event, we had a triple threat match for the Universal Championship. Roman Reigns defending against Daniel Bryan and Edge. The one thing I wish they would have used more in the build up to this, and I'm surprised they didn't, was the fact that all three of these men weren't even supposed to be here at this point in time. Daniel Bryan had to retire because of neck issues. Edge had to retire because of neck issues. Roman Reigns, there was a chance he might not come back at all because of his leukemia and everything. So all three of these men overcame, health obstacles to get where they were. And I'm very surprised that they did not use that at all in the build up to this match. I mean, you know, it was right there, but they didn't go for it. Of course, Edge had won the Royal Rumble, challenged Roman Reigns. Daniel Bryan had got screwed out of the title at the Elimination Chamber. This led to a triple threat match where Roman Reigns ended up pinning both men to retain his title. This would also be Daniel Bryan's last WrestleMania match because his contract expired, like I said, a few weeks after this, and he ended up facing Roman Reigns one more time on SmackDown where he lost. And then after that, Daniel Bryan was no longer in WWE. He moved over to AEW later that year. Um, yeah, like I said, I think that was a perfect storyline they could have used right there with all three of these men overcoming these health issues to get where they were to get back to the main event of WrestleMania. But they didn't use it. Did I really think Roman Reigns would have lost his title at this point in time? Because this is like pretty much in a way still the beginning of his title reign that would go on to last 4 years. Um, And to think he would have lost at this point in time, I don't think he would have. Honestly, if it was just him and Edge, I thought maybe there was a chance he could have lost that title to give Edge one last, legacy run with that title, but they didn't go that way. Of course, Roman won, and it was only be the beginning of his 4 year reign as Universal Champion. So there you have what WWE gave to us. Now let's go and see how I would have booked WrestleMania 37. I started booking this, I want to say, like mid January, somewhere around there, mid to late January. Um, and for whatever reason, I still booked this as a one night WrestleMania. I could have gone and done it as a two night, but I wasn't sure if they were still going to keep the whole two night thing at the time. So I went ahead and did a one night, pay per view anyway. So bear with me. Starting off on the pre-show, we have a women's battle royal, and I would have gave the one win to Bailey. As I was saying earlier, Bailey was one of the MVPs of the whole pandemic era. She like pretty much carried SmackDown throughout that whole time period. She was women's champion for over a year, and then she had her epic match with Sasha at Hell in the Cell. Um, I'm pretty sure they probably could have stretched that out to WrestleMania. They could just like had Sasha just like getting written off TV for being injured, come back at the Rumble and challenge Bailey. But obviously they had that match at the Hell in a Cell. Um, Sasha would go on to actually have a good lengthy title run for once. But yeah, it really sucked that Bailey wasn't even on this card at all. She did make an appearance, but she got like bullied by the Bella Twins. And of course, I love the Bella Twins, but I really think Bailey deserved better than what she got at this WrestleMania this year, that year. I mean, um, it just really sucks because Bailey, I feel like has been given like a bad hand pretty much most of the time. Like I don't know how to say like I just think they could have done better with her that year. Um, so up next, I have a triple threat match for the Raw Tag Team titles. It would have been the Hurt Business team of Shelton Benjamin and Cedric Alexander defending against the New Day and the Miz and John Morrison. Oh, okay. So now I remember when I booked this. It had to have been early January because I obviously didn't know there was gonna be a whole thing with Bad Bunny. So Bad Bunny, the whole Bad Bunny thing is not present in my WrestleMania card because, like I said, I didn't know that was gonna happen. So there's no Bad Bunny, Damian Priest also. So yeah, there's unfortunately that is not on this card. Up next, we have the Andre the Giant Battle Royal, and I would have had it won by Matt Riddle because I think he's like the biggest name that I left off this card. So I'll give the win to him there. And then the main event of the pre-show would be for women's tag team championships. It would have been Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler defending against NXT's Sachi Blackheart and Ember Moon. You're probably wondering how the hell did that happen? Well, if you recall, if you remember, they had the Dusty Classic going on at the time, and they did say that the winner of the women's Dusty Classic would get a shot at the women's tag team titles. And I really thought they would have got that title shot at WrestleMania, if maybe even the pre-show. Well, when I thought they were still gonna have one, but they didn't. They had like a random episode of NXT. But I really think the way I would have done it, I would have let them go ahead and, of course, Sachi, one of my favorites, her and Ember Moon, win the Dusty Classic and challenge Nia and Shayna for the tag team titles at WrestleMania. I would probably, as much as I love Sachi, I think I would still give the win to Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler, and let them do whatever they were doing next. Up now, we're going on to the main card, and we're gonna kick things off with my personal favorite, a multi-man ladder match. This time for the Intercontinental title, and I really liked what I put together for this match. And not to sound cocky or arrogant, but I really think the talent involved in this match could have put on one hell of a ladder match. And I remember sharing this WrestleMania booking with one of my friends, and he even said that ladder match sounded like it would cook, as the kids say. They liked my idea for this match. So in this match, we would have Big E defending the Intercontinental title against Baron Corbin, Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn, Seth Rollins, Cesaro, Jey Uso and Shinsuke Nakamura. Of course, this is around the whole main event Jey Uso time when he was starting to get his little single push. We got Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn. You know, they had their match. We combined that into this as well as the whole Seth Rollins and Cesaro. And then you got Shinsuke Nakamura, who was involved with that because he was Cesaro's partner. And then we got Baron Corbin because we need somebody to get their ass kicked and get put through a table. So yeah, I think I would have gave. I think what I would have done. I think I would have gave the win to Seth Rollins. Let him, I could see like ladder matches being the kind of match where a heel can sneak his way up and grab that title down, and and then he could go on to feud with that current champion, the last champion, which is Big E. Or another thing that I could honestly see would have been Sami Zayn being the heel, sneak up, grab that title, have him feud with Kevin Owens over that title, over the summer, because Big E was gonna end up winning the Money in the Bank that year anyway. So yeah, and at least it also spares us the whole Apollo Crews title reign. I'm done hating Apollo for now. Up next would be the SmackDown Tag Team titles. Dolph Ziggler and Robert Roode defending against Dominic and Rey Mysterio. They actually did this match, I want to say, I think on the SmackDown before WrestleMania. And I think Dolph Ziggler and Robert Roode won. And then they had a rematch at Backlash where Dominic and Rey won. I think this would have been a perfect match to have on WrestleMania because Dominic Mysterio was just, still, new into he only been with WWE for like a few months at this point. And to have that father son moment, win the tag team titles together at WrestleMania, it was like right there. And again, I always say sometimes the most obvious choice is the best thing to do. And of course, they didn't do it. Instead, they had a father son winning a tag team title moment for the very first time at Backlash the fun next month. But hey, what can you do? Vince McMahon during this time was not the greatest. Up next, I would have a fatal four way for the United States Championship. It'll be Bobby Lashley defending against Damian Priest, Braun Strowman, and Keith Lee. Now, I'm trying to remember how I got to this point because I think Bobby Lashley was the United States champion a couple months before this. And I think he only got the WWE title because I think he like cast in a favor from the Miz and he won the title from the Miz in like a squash because the Miz had cast in his Money in the Bank contract. It was yeah. So in this timeline, Bobby Lashley is still the United States champion. Damian Priest and Keith Lee make their debuts in the Royal Rumble, even though Keith Lee really didn't. And then Braun Strowman and the guy, and as the kids say, big beefy men slapping meat or whatever the hell the phrase is. There you go. I also think it would have been a nice little, cool down in between match. And I think I would give the win to my boy Damian Priest because he was one of my faves. Up next, we have a special NXT Championship match. Finn Balor defending against Adam Cole. Yes, I know they don't really usually have NXT matches at WrestleMania, but I feel like they probably could have done at least an NXT Championship match. I mean, they had the whole NXT Women's Championship the year before, so why not have this one for the men this year? And I think because this is when Finn Balor had went back down to NXT, and then he had like the whole heel run and everything, and I think he might have been back to being a babyface at this point. And then Adam Cole, of course, was a heel, so I think it would have been nice to have Finn Balor and Adam Cole. And it's a good way to spotlight the NXT title at WrestleMania. And of course, I'm pretty sure these guys could put on a hell of a match, but knowing WWE, they probably would have given like 10 minutes, if even that. So I think I would have given the win to Finn Balor still. Up next, we have Edge versus AJ Styles. Basically the match that had the next the following year. It was just I just moved it up a year before, and I really thought they probably could have gone with that, but instead, like I said, Edge won the Royal Rumble. So this is how you know I booked this before the Royal Rumble. I usually do these before the Royal Rumble. Sometimes I'll wait till after to see who won, see if we get a better picture. But I booked this before the Royal Rumble, so I don't have Edge winning that. Instead, he goes on to challenge someone he's never fought before, AJ Styles at WrestleMania. Up next, we have a triple threat match for the Raw Women's Championship, which is what I thought they were going to go for. It'll be Asuka defending against Rhea Ripley and Charlotte. If I recall, they were supposed to originally have Asuka drop the title to Lacey Evans, who was in the middle of a feud with Charlotte, and then they would have fought at WrestleMania. Charlotte would have bought Lacey for the title, and this was during the whole time, the whole little. It was not a good storyline. The whole thing between Lacey, I guess, having an affair with Ric Flair, and then, but she ended up getting pregnant, so they had to drop that storyline. And then because of that, Charlotte did not compete at WrestleMania, so they stuck with Asuka as champion and instead had her go against Rhea Ripley. So I think if anything, they probably could have done a triple threat match, but they decided to go, the one-on-one match anyway. But I still would have had Rhea Ripley win this triple threat match anyway. And I think they actually had a triple threat match, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, they did. They had it the following month at Backlash, and I think they probably should have done it there, but then have a one-on-one at Backlash. But up next, we have a Hell in a Cell, Bray Wyatt versus Randy Orton. I think a Hell in a Cell would have been the perfect way to end this feud between Bray Wyatt and Randy Orton and the Fiend. It would have been the perfect way to end this feud, and hopefully it would have been a lot better than the Maxwell match that we actually got. Um, but yeah, I really think they should have went with the Hell in a Cell. Bray Wyatt, Randy Orton, especially if knowing what we know, this would have been one of Bray Wyatt's last matches. It would have been a hell of a way to go out, especially to have Bray Wyatt win. But unfortunately, that did not happen. Up next, we have the WWE title, Drew McIntyre versus Sheamus. In this timeline, Drew McIntyre retains the title. Of course, in the lead up to the actual WrestleMania, they had like a whole tension between Drew McIntyre and his partner at the time, Sheamus, and they ended up having a match at Fastlane. But by this time, Drew had lost the title to Bobby Lashley, and then these two just had like a whole no holds barred match and just beat the living hell out of each other. And I think they should have saved Sheamus turning heel and then going on to challenge Drew McIntyre for the WWE title at WrestleMania. Of course, these guys probably would have still put on a hell of a match. Again, probably still beat the hell out of each other. But I think I would have gave the win to Drew McIntyre to let him retain that title and to get that WWE title win in front of the fans that he rightfully deserved the year before. Up next, we have the SmackDown Women's title. Sasha Banks defending against Bianca Belair. Of course, keeping the whole same theme. Bianca wins the Royal Rumble, challenges Sasha Banks. They have the same match, same outcome. As much as Sasha is my number one favorite, and as much as I would love to be biased and let her win and retain her title, I would still give the win to Bianca Belair because I feel like it was a passage of the torch moment. Because at this point in time, Sasha Banks was already a veteran on the main roster, so I felt like it was only natural for her to do the honors, if you will, for Bianca Belair. So I think I would have kept that as it is. And then in the main event, I would have had Roman Reigns defending the Universal title against the Royal Rumble winner, Daniel Bryan. Yes, in this timeline, I have Daniel Bryan finally winning the Royal Rumble, even though it's probably at this point like 5 years too late. But with the person who actually won the Royal Rumble Edge, I got him elsewhere. That left me with Daniel Bryan, and I felt it would have been a perfect way, especially if Daniel Bryan was gonna leave WWE anyway. I felt like it would have been a perfect time for him to get that WrestleMania main event he never got. Wait, never mind, he did get. Never mind, excuse that. His first one-on-one WrestleMania main event. Um, of course, Roman Reigns would have won, continuing that undisputed championship reign for another 4 years. So yeah, so there you go. That's how I would have booked WrestleMania 37. Um, what did you like? Did you like what we got? Did you like what I gave you? What would you have done different? What would you have changed? How would you have done WrestleMania 37? Of course, I appreciate and welcome all comments and feedback, and positive or negative. I welcome it. Um, if you haven't hit subscribe, feel free to go ahead and subscribe. Uh, so yeah, that's all I can say for now. Until next week, when we go on to our next WrestleMania. Like I said, I have a couple other ideas that I'm currently working on, a few projects that I'm working on in regards to movies, video games, videos that will be coming to here. I'm still deciding on what wrestling content I want to do after I finish these WrestleMania rebookings. I have a couple of ideas. I'll see what happens once we get there. Like I said, we only got like 5 more WrestleManias to go to rebook, so which we'll continue that next week with the most stupendous WrestleMania, if you recall, WrestleMania 38. So hopefully you enjoyed the video. Um, so yeah, see you around. Until next time, if you haven't asked me about it, chances are I'm going to talk about it anyway.